Hey, before you scroll past this, I need you to sit down for a second because I've got to tell you something, and it's the kind of thing I'd only tell a friend. Right now, quietly in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, something is happening that most people have absolutely no idea about. Scientists are watching a number climb, and that number could end up rewriting the record books for the most powerful weather event our planet has ever produced. Not in your lifetime, not in the last 50 years, ever, since we started keeping records. And here's the part that actually kept me up last night. Some of the scientists tracking this aren't totally sure how bad it could get. There's real uncertainty here, real disagreement between top researchers, which, if you know anything about how science usually works, should tell you something. So today, I want to walk you through this the way I'd explain it to my own family over dinner. No fear mongering, no doom scrolling nonsense, just what is actually happening, why it matters to you, specifically if you live in the US. And the big question everybody's asking that literally nobody can answer for certain yet. Stick with me to the end because there's a twist in the data around minute 10 that changes the whole conversation. Okay, let's back up because I don't want to lose anyone here. You probably heard the term El Nino thrown around on the news like everyone's just supposed to know what it means. So let's actually break it down, friend to friend. Picture the Pacific Ocean, the biggest ocean on Earth. Normally, there are steady winds blowing east to west along the equator, called the trade winds. Those winds act like a conveyor belt, pushing warm surface water toward Asia and Australia. That leaves the eastern Pacific near South America with cooler water rising up from the depths. That's the normal setup. It's boring, it's stable, it's what the planet does most years, but every 2 to 7 years, something shifts. Those trade winds weaken, and when they weaken, all that warm water that was piled up in the west starts sloshing back east, spreading out across the middle and eastern Pacific. That warm water event has a name: El Niño, Spanish for the little boy, originally named by South American fishermen who noticed the warm water usually showed up around Christmas. Now here's the thing people don't realize. El Niño isn't just a warm ocean story. It's a steering wheel for the entire planet's weather. It shifts the jet stream. It moves storm tracks. It can turn a wet region dry and a dry region wet, thousands of miles from the Pacific itself. So when El Niño shows up, everybody feels it, even if you've never been near an ocean in your life. Here's where it gets interesting and where our story for 2026 starts to separate from a normal year. Scientists classify an El Niño as super when ocean temperatures in a specific patch of the Pacific, called the Niño 3.4 region, climb at least 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average, and that's roughly 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit of extra heat sitting in an area of ocean larger than the continental United States. Since we started keeping reliable modern records back in 1950, that threshold has only been crossed 5 times: 1972, 1982, 1991, 1997, and the last one back in 2015, 5 times in over 70 years. That's how rare a true Super El Nino actually is. But 2026 isn't behaving like a normal 5 times a century event. And that's exactly why people who study this for a living are suddenly using words they don't usually throw around lightly. Let me walk you through the timeline because watching it unfold is honestly kind of wild. In June of this year, NOAA, the government agency that tracks this stuff, officially declared that El Nino had begun. Okay, fine, expected. But then it did something forecasters didn't expect. It strengthened fast. Within just a few weeks, it blew past moderate strength, weeks ahead of typical schedule. By July, the major forecasting models, American, European, all of them, started lining up on the same conclusion. There's now more than an 80% chance this event reaches very strong territory by the October to December window. And some of the more aggressive model runs are projecting ocean temperatures could spike 3 to 4 degrees Celsius above average. If that number holds, that would put it above the previous record holder, the winter of 1982 to 83. So sit with that for a second. We're not just talking about a super El Nino anymore. We're talking about the possibility, not a guarantee, but a real possibility of the strongest El Nino humanity has measured since we started measuring. Okay, this is the part I promised you. Minute 10, the twist. Every single one of those five previous super El Ninos, 1972, 1982, 1991, 1997, 2015 happened on a cooler planet than the one we're living on right now. Today, global average temperatures are already running more than 1.4 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That's the baseline. That's before El Nino even shows up to the party. So this time, El Nino isn't hitting a normal planet. It's hitting a planet that's already running hot, already loaded with extra energy from decades of warming. Climate scientists have said on the record that we have never observed a strong El Nino layered on top of a baseline this warm. There's no clean historical comparison to point to, no neat chart from 1982 that tells us exactly what happens next, which means the honest, uncomfortable answer to how bad could this get is nobody knows for certain. The people whose entire job is predicting this are telling you straight up that we're in uncharted territory. That's not clickbait. That's the actual scientific consensus talking. Let's get practical for a second because I know what you're really thinking. Okay, but does this affect me? Short answer, yes, almost certainly, no matter where in the country you live. El Nino reshapes the jet stream, and the jet stream is basically the highway that storms travel on across North America. In a strong El Nino winter, the storm track typically shifts south. That tends to mean wetter, stormier conditions across the southern U.S. Think Texas, the Gulf Coast, the southeast and southern California, which can be good news for drought-starved reservoirs, but also raises flood risk. Warmer, drier conditions across the northern U.S. and parts of the Midwest, which can mean a milder winter for some, but also a rougher setup for farmers depending on snowpack and spring runoff. And on the Atlantic hurricane side, strong El Nino years tend to suppress hurricane activity because it increases wind shear that tears storms apart before they can strengthen. None of this is a guarantee. El Nino influences the odds. It doesn't write the forecast in stone. But when the event is this strong, those effects tend to be more pronounced, not less. And zooming out globally for a second, forecasters are already flagging that 2026 could end up being one of the hottest years ever recorded. And because El Nino's heat effect on the atmosphere tends to lag behind the ocean itself, 2027 could actually end up even hotter. Now, I promised you I wasn't going to fear-monger, so let's talk about the other side because it matters. Not every model agrees this becomes a record breaker. And then some forecasts show this topping out as strong, not necessarily historic. And here's something important. Every El Nino has its own personality. Just like hurricanes, no two are identical, even when the early numbers look similar. So the honest answer to the big question, is this really going to be the strongest El Nino ever recorded? Is it's a real possibility backed by serious data, but it is not a done deal. The window between October and December is when we'll actually know. I'd rather tell you the true, uncertain answer than a fake, confident one. That's the deal I make with you every time we do one of these. So here's what I keep coming back to. If 2026 really does end up breaking a record that stood since the 1800s, that's not just a weather story. That's a signal, a real, measurable sign that we're entering conditions the modern world has genuinely never experienced before. Or maybe it settles down, stays strong instead of historic, and becomes just another entry in a natural cycle the planet has run for thousands of years. Either way, I think you deserve to know this is happening before it's already on every news channel and everyone's suddenly an expert. So here's my question for you, honestly. Drop it in the comments. Do you think this is a sign we've crossed into genuinely new territory? Or do you think this is nature doing what it's always done, just with better instruments watching it this time? I read every single comment, so tell me what you think. And hey, if this kept you watching this long, that tells me you actually care about understanding this stuff instead of just being told what to be scared of. So do me a favor, hit subscribe, because the real story here plays out between now and December, and I'm going to be tracking every update as it comes in. I don't want you finding out from a headline. I want you to already know. See you in the next one.